My wife's son looked me in the eye and said, "We only obey real family, not Favelado's mom married." I smiled, pulled out my phone, and that night I canceled everything I'd been paying for 3 years. Then I called their uncle and told him to come get his kids. He panicked. They panicked, but I was finally free. My name is Lucas. I'm 41 years old, and I grew up in Rocinha, Rio de Janeiro. I'm a civil engineer now, successful, making good money. For the past 3 years, I've been married to Fernanda, a widow from Botafogo with 2 children from her first marriage. Felipe is 17, Julia is 15, and until that Tuesday night, I thought we were building something real. I was wrong. This is my story. I grew up in Rocinha with nothing. My mother sold fruit on the street. My father did odd jobs when he could find work. We lived in a small house with walls that didn't quite meet the ceiling and a roof that leaked when it rained. I shared a room with my 3 brothers. We had electricity most days. Water came from a communal tap we shared with neighbors. But I studied. Every night by candlelight when the power was out, I studied. I walked 2 hours each way to a better public school in Botafogo. I worked delivering groceries at 12, washing cars at 14, anything to help my family and save for university. I got into the Federal University on scholarship, graduated top of my class in civil engineering, got hired by a major construction firm, worked my way up. By 35, I was making more money than my father had seen in his entire life. I bought my mother a real house, sent my brothers to trade schools, moved to a decent apartment in Tijuca. I'd made it out of the favela, but some people never let you forget where you came from. I met Fernanda at a work conference 4 years ago. She was there representing her late husband's architecture firm. Educated, polished, from a good family in Botafogo. Her husband, Eduardo, had died 2 years earlier, leaving her with the firm, 2 kids, and insurance money that was running out. We started dating. She seemed different from other women I'd met from her social circle. She asked about my work, my family, my journey from Rocinha. She said she admired my determination. She introduced me to her children after 6 months. Felipe was 14 then. Julia was 12. They were polite but distant. That's normal, Fernanda assured me. They're still grieving their father. Give them time. I gave them time, years of patience, money, and effort, and all I got back was contempt. We got married in a small ceremony, just family. I noticed how Fernanda's family looked at me during the wedding. Her mother with barely concealed disapproval, her sister with pity. But Fernanda held my hand and told me she loved me. That was enough. Or so I thought. After the wedding, I moved into Fernanda's house in Botafogo. A nice place, 3 bedrooms, decent neighborhood. Eduardo had bought it before he died. The mortgage was paid off, but the bills were piling up. Fernanda's architecture firm was struggling. She was stressed, working long hours, barely making ends meet. So I stepped in. I paid for everything. Utilities, food, the kids' private school that cost $1,800 a month for both of them. Felipe's soccer training, $600 a month. Julia's ballet classes, $400 a month. Their phones, their laptops, their clothes, their weekend activities with friends, everything. I never complained. I thought I was building a family. I thought eventually they'd see me as more than just the guy who married their mom. But Felipe and Julia never called me by my name. I was he or mom's husband. They'd talk around me like I wasn't there. When they needed money, they'd ask Fernanda, who would then ask me, like I was her ATM, not her husband. When I tried to establish rules, simple things like clean up after yourself or be home by curfew, they'd ignore me. And Fernanda would quietly tell them later not to worry, that she'd talk to me, undermining me every single time. The worst part was Eduardo, the dead husband. His photos were everywhere in that house. Family. Portraits in the living room, pictures of him with the kids in their bedrooms, his golf club still in the garage, his favorite chair that no one was allowed to sit in. I understood keeping memories, but it felt like I was living in a shrine. Every time I suggested maybe we could make the house feel like ours, Fernanda would get defensive. The kids need to remember their father. And they did remember. They worshipped him. Felipe especially. He'd bring up Eduardo constantly. My dad used to take me sailing. My dad knew important people all over Rio. My dad's architecture firm won awards. Always comparisons. Always making it clear that I, the guy from Rocinha, could never measure up to Eduardo from old money Botafogo. But the real poison came from Eduardo's family. His brother Marcelo would visit sometimes. He'd make comments. Must be nice, he'd say to the kids, having someone from SE, the favela, living in your father's house, using your father's things. I bet he never imagined someone like that raising his children. The kids would laugh. Fernanda would tell Marcelo to stop, but without any real force. And I'd sit there in the house I was paying to maintain, feeling like an intruder. About 3 months before everything exploded, things got noticeably worse. Felipe got a girlfriend, Camila. A girl from Leblon, daughter of a lawyer. She came over for dinner once. Afterwards, I overheard Felipe talking to her in the garden. She'd asked about me. Who is he? Your mom's new husband? Felipe laughed. Yeah, the Favelado. He makes good money now, works in engineering, but he's still from Rocinha. You can tell. Acts like he belongs here, but everyone knows he doesn't. My mom married him because she needed financial stability after dad died. It's practical, not romantic. Camila's voice dropped. So he's basically paying for everything? Pretty much, Felipe said. But we don't have to respect him or anything. He's not our father. Our real father was Eduardo. This guy is just temporary. I stood there in the hallway, frozen. All those years of paying their bills, attending their school events, helping with homework, driving them places, and I was just the favelado their mom married for money. Temporary. Not real family. I didn't confront Felipe about that conversation. What would be the point? But something changed in me that day. I started documenting everything, every expense, every bill. Every time they asked for money through Fernanda, I kept a folder on my computer. Dates, amounts, purposes. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just had a feeling I'd need it someday. That day came last Tuesday. I got home early from a site inspection. The house was a disaster. Dishes piled in the sink, school bags thrown in the hallway, wet towels on the bathroom floor. Nothing new. But that day, I'd had enough. For years, I'd been cleaning up after them, paying their way, and getting nothing but disrespect in return. I called Felipe and Julia to the living room. They came down dragging their feet, annoyed at being interrupted. Felipe didn't even take out his earbuds. Julia was glued to her phone, the iPhone I'd bought her 2 months ago. We need to talk about the rules in this house, I said, keeping my voice calm. This isn't the first time. I've asked you to clean up after yourselves and help with chores. Your mother works all day. I work all day. You're old enough to be responsible. Felipe let out a dismissive laugh without even looking at me. And what are you going to do if we don't? Ground us? His tone was mocking, challenging. You could start by showing some basic respect, I said, feeling the anger building in my chest. That's when Julia looked up from her phone with those contemptuous eyes she'd perfected. You're nobody to tell us what to do, Lucas. We only obey our real family, our parents. You're just the favelado mom, married because she needed money after dad died. The words hung in the air like knives. Felipe nodded, supporting his sister. Exactly. We don't have to listen to you. Our dad told us that before he died. We only answer to family, not to outsiders who live in our house. Something broke inside me at that moment. Not explosive anger, something colder, more calculated. For years I'd invested time, money, and effort into these kids. I'd paid for Felipe's soccer training when he made the select team. I'd bought Julia's ballet shoes when she got into the advanced class. I'd paid for their laptops, their phones, their designer clothes. I'd driven them to parties, picked them up from friends' houses, sat through school plays where they pretended I didn't exist. And now I was the favelado outsider in their house, the house I was paying to maintain. I stood up, walked to my office, and pulled out the folder I'd been keeping. Years of documentation, every receipt, every bank transfer, every expense related to Felipe and Julia. I'd been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. I came back to the living room with the folder and my phone. Felipe and Julia were still there, now, watching me with something like concern. You're right, I said, my voice completely calm. I'm not your father. Eduardo was your father. And since you only obey your real family, I have no obligation to maintain the privileges I've been paying for. I opened the folder on the coffee table. Your phone. Plans. Cancelled. Your gym membership. Cancelled. Felipe's soccer training. Cancelled. Julia's ballet classes. Cancelled. The high-speed internet I need for work, but you use more. Restricted to specific hours. The private school that costs $1,800 a month for both of you. I'll finish paying this semester. After that, your father's family or your mother can figure it out. Julia dropped her phone. What? You can't do that. Of course I can, I said, pulling out my phone. Everything is in my name. I pay for all of it. And if you only obey your real family, then only your real family should pay for your privileges. Felipe stood up, his face reddening. Mom won't let you do this. Your mom, I said, already dialing Fernanda's number, is working a double shift at the architecture firm trying to keep it from going bankrupt. The firm your father left her with debt. Debt I've been helping to pay off for years. The call went to voicemail. Fernanda was in a client meeting, like she'd mentioned that morning. So I dialed another number, one I'd gotten from Fernanda's phone months ago, just in case. Marcelo, I said when Eduardo's brother answered. This is Lucas, Fernanda's husband. I need you to come get your brother's kids tonight. They said they only obey their real family, not favelados. So it's time for the real family to take responsibility. There was silence on the other end. What? I can't. I have plans tonight. Cancel them, I said firmly. Felipe and Julia need their real family. I'll be waiting for you in 1 hour. If you don't show up, I'll call child services and explain that these minors are in a situation of emotional neglect by their biological family. I hung up before he could respond. Felipe and Julia stared at me with a mixture of shock and fear I'd never seen on their faces before. Pack a bag, I said, putting my phone away. Your uncle is coming. You're insane, Julia whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Mom is going to divorce you for this. Maybe, I admitted, feeling a strange calm settling over me, but at least I'll know I'm not going to keep being treated like an outsider in my own marriage while I pay for everything you enjoy. The next hour was tense silence. I heard them upstairs, opening drawers, arguing in low voices. I sat in the living room with that folder of evidence on my lap, bank statements showing monthly transfers for their expenses, receipts from their activities, bills for their devices, years of financial records. When the doorbell rang exactly 57 minutes later, I stood and opened the door. Marcelo was there in his work clothes, his face showing confusion and irritation. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. I handed him the folder. "This is what's been going on for years. I've been paying for everything your brother's kids need and want while you and the rest of Eduardo's family barely contribute anything. And today, after everything I've done, they told me I'm just a favelado outsider who has no right to respect in this house." Marcelo opened the folder, his eyes scanning the numbers. His face went progressively paler as he turned the pages. "This is a lot of money." "Yes, it is," I said, "and I'm tired of being treated like hired help with no authority. So here's your chance to be the family you claim to be. Take them." Felipe and Julia came down the stairs with their bags. Julia's eyes were red from crying. Felipe kept his gaze fixed on the floor. For the first time in months, both had lost the arrogance that usually defined them. "Uncle Marcelo," Julia started, her voice shaking. "We can't just leave like this. What about Mom?" "Your mom," I interrupted, "is going to come home in a few hours and find a complete explanation of what happened, along with copies of all these documents and a recording of what you said to me this afternoon." I pulled out my phone and hit play. My voice calm and measured, asking for respect. Julia's cruel response. "You're nobody to tell us what to do, Lucas. We only obey our real family. You're just the favelado mom married because she needed money." Felipe's words supporting her, calling me an outsider in their house. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcelo closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and finally nodded. "Come on," he said to Felipe and Julia. "Get your things." "No," Julia protested. "I don't want to go. Uncle Marcelo, tell him he can't do this." But Marcelo was already picking up their bags, his face showing a mixture of shame and resignation. "You said you only obey family, so obey. We're going to my place now." I watched them walk out the door, get into Marcelo's car, drive away down the street. I closed the door, leaned against it, and for the first time in months felt like I could breathe fully. My phone vibrated. A message from Fernanda finishing her meeting. "Everything okay at home?" I looked around my house, now silent, now peaceful, now mine again. "We need to talk when you get home," I wrote back. "It's important." I didn't know what would happen when Fernanda arrived. Didn't know if this would save or destroy our marriage. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again allow myself to be treated like a second-class citizen in my own life, in my own home. With my own money. Years of ignored respect, years of dismissed effort, years of being called mom's husband instead, of being considered family. All of it had ended with one simple phrase. "We only obey real family, not favelados." Well, let the real family take care of them then. Let them pay the bills. Let them deal with the teenage drama. I was done being the fool who paid for his own mistreatment. Fernanda came home 2 hours later, just past 11 at night. I heard her open the door, drop her keys in the ceramic dish we'd bought together on a trip to Parity, sigh with that deep exhaustion that comes after working 14 hours straight. I was sitting in the living room with all the lights on, waiting. "Lucas," she said when she saw me, immediate concern crossing her face. "Your message scared me. What happened? Where are the kids?" I gestured for her to sit. She put her bag down but stayed standing, her eyes scanning the too quiet, too organized house. "Where are Felipe and Julia?" she repeated, her voice rising slightly. "With their uncle," I answered calmly. "Marcelo came and picked them up a few hours ago." Fernanda's face went from confusion to panic in seconds. "What? Why? Did something happen? Are they okay?" I handed her my phone with the recording ready to play. "Listen to this first," I said. Then we'll talk." Fernanda took the phone with trembling hands and pressed play. I watched her expression change as she listened. My calm voice asking for respect. Julia's cruel words. Felipe's support. When it ended, she sank onto the couch, the phone slipping from her fingers. "I can't believe they said that." "There's more," I said, handing her the folder. "Years of expenses, everything I've paid for your children. Felipe's school, his soccer training, his laptop, his phone, Julia's school, her ballet, her clothes, her devices. Marcelo sends what? $300 a month from Eduardo's estate? That barely covers their school supplies." Fernanda opened the folder, her eyes moving quickly over the numbers. I saw her face grow paler with each page she turned. "Lucas, I didn't know it was this much. I thought..." "You thought what?" I asked. My voice still calm but with an edge she hadn't heard before. "That it was my obligation to pay for everything without expecting even basic respect in return. That's not it," she said quickly, setting the folder on the table. "It's just that the kids are going through a difficult time. They lost their father. They're angry at the world, and I'm the easy target." I finished. The one who can receive all the contempt because I'm not their real father. But I'm the one paying all the bills because Eduardo's family won't, and you can't do it alone on what the architecture firm makes. Fernanda stood up abruptly. That's not fair. I work 14 hours a day to contribute to this household. And I also work, I responded, standing to face her. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being our house and became a place where I finance everything while your children treat me like an intruder. Do you know how many times they've called me Lucas instead of anything resembling a father figure? Every single time. Do you know how many times they've thanked me for something I bought them? Never. Do you know how many times they've asked my permission to go out or respected a rule I set? 0. They're confused, Fernanda insisted, and I could see tears beginning to form in her eyes. Eduardo's family puts ideas in their heads. Marcelo tells them they don't have to obey you, that I married you for money, that— And what do you tell them? I interrupted. When Marcelo fills their heads with those lies, do you correct them? Do you tell them to respect me? Or do you just let it continue because it's easier than confronting them? Fernanda went quiet, and that silence was more revealing than any answer. I thought so, I said, feeling a weight settle in my chest. You've been allowing this, Fernanda, this whole time. It's not that simple, she said, her voice now showing frustration too. They're my children, Lucas. I can't just— I'm not asking you to choose between them and me, I interrupted. I'm asking you to teach them respect, to teach them gratitude, to teach them that actions have consequences. But clearly that hasn't been happening. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Marcelo. The kids are crying, saying Fernanda is going to divorce you over this. Is that true? I showed Fernanda the message. She read it, and a strange expression crossed her face, something between pain and recognition. I'm not going to divorce you for setting boundaries, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. But I also can't believe you sent them to Marcelo without even talking to me first. I talked to you 1,000 times, I responded, my frustration finally starting to show. Every time I mentioned their behavior, you told me they were just being teenagers. Every time I asked for your support in establishing rules, you told me you didn't want to create more conflict. Every time I pointed out their disrespect, you told me to give them time. Years, Fernanda. I gave them years of time, patience, money, effort. And today they told me I'm just a favelado outsider in my own house. Fernanda collapsed back onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. I don't know what to do, she sobbed. They're my babies, Lucas. I know they're not perfect. I know they've been difficult, but they're my children. I sat next to her, maintaining a small space between us, and I never asked you to choose between them and me. But I also can't keep living like this. I can't keep paying for everything while they treat me like I don't matter. I can't keep being the only one who sets boundaries while you undermine me every time it makes them uncomfortable. So what do you want me to do? She asked, looking up at me with red eyes. What do you want from me? I want you to be my wife, I said simply. Not just the mother of your children who happens to live with me. I want us to defend this house's rules together. I want you to teach them gratitude when I buy them something. I want you to back me up when I set a limit instead of consoling them afterwards and telling them to ignore me. I want us to be a team, Fernanda, not a provider and a mother who tolerates him. She nodded slowly, tears running freely down her cheeks. You're right. I've been unfair to you. I've been so focused on protecting my children from the pain of divorce that I didn't see I was allowing them to hurt you. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Marcelo. Julia is having a panic attack. Says it was just a joke, that she didn't mean it. I need Fernanda to talk to her. I passed the phone to Fernanda. She read the message, her fingers hovering over the screen, hesitating. It wasn't a joke, I said softly. They meant every word. And if they're scared now, it's because for the first time in years they're facing the consequences of their words and actions. Fernanda closed her eyes, took several deep breaths. When she opened them, there was something different in her gaze, something firmer. You're right, she said finally, handing back the phone without responding to the message. If I call them now and rescue them, I'm just teaching them. They can say whatever they want without consequences. I've already done that too many times. I looked at her, surprised by this response. Are you sure? No, she admitted with a bitter laugh. Every part of me as a mother wants to call Marcelo, apologize, bring my children back and make everything go back to normal. But that normal was toxic, wasn't it? She continued. It was me allowing them to disrespect you while you supported us all financially. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. When Eduardo died, I promised myself I'd never depend on a man again. I got my job at the firm, started paying my own bills. I was proud of my independence, but in the process I think I also built a wall around my children, taught them that nobody else mattered, that we only had each other, that any father figure who tried to enter our lives was temporary and didn't deserve our real respect. She turned to me and I could see raw honesty in her face. I taught them to treat you the way they have, Lucas, not directly but with my silence, with my permissiveness, with my need to always be the good mother who never disciplines them, and that has to change. And how do we change this? I asked, feeling a mixture of hope and exhaustion. I don't know completely, she admitted. But I know that tomorrow I'm going to talk to Marcelo and Eduardo's family and set new expectations. If they want to continue being part of my children's lives, they need to stop poisoning them against you. And if the kids want to come back to this house, they're going to have to earn that privilege. Earn the privilege of living in their own home? I questioned. This is your house, Lucas, she corrected me. You bought it when Eduardo's mortgage was drowning us. I moved in here with my children, and somewhere along the way we all started acting like you were the guest. That ends now. My phone vibrated once more. This time it was a message from Julia directly to my number. Please, Lucas, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean those things. Please tell Mom to let us come home. I promise I'll change. I showed the message to Fernanda. She read it and sighed deeply. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to respond, I said. But not as the mother who rescues her children from consequences. As my wife who stands by me and understands this isn't negotiable. Fernanda took my phone and slowly typed, Julia, I understand you're scared and sorry, but what you said to Lucas today was unacceptable. You're staying with Uncle Marcelo for now while we all think about how to move forward. I love you, but respect isn't optional in a family. We'll talk tomorrow. She pressed send before she could doubt. Almost immediately the phone started ringing. Julia's number. Fernanda declined the call. It's going to be a long night, she murmured. Yes, I agreed, but it's the beginning of something necessary. We sat together on the couch in silence as outside the night deepened. The phone kept vibrating periodically with messages from the kids, from Marcelo, even one from Fernanda's mother asking what was happening because Julia had called her crying. Fernanda ignored all the messages except the last one. To her mother she wrote, Mom, we're handling a family situation. I'll explain. Tomorrow. Please don't interfere. Your mother is going to call in 3, 2, I started counting. The phone rang. Fernanda silenced it. I learned from the best, she said with a tired smile, referring to my handling of the situation earlier. That night we barely slept. Every time one of us was about to drift off, the phone would vibrate again. Messages from Felipe saying he hated living with Marcelo. Messages from Julia promising to be better. Messages from Marcelo complaining he didn't have space for 2 teenagers in his small apartment. At 3 in the morning, Fernanda finally turned off her phone. If it's a real emergency, they'll call the police, she said, getting under the covers. For the first time in years, I'm going to sleep without worrying about rescuing someone. I curled up next to her, feeling her tense body gradually relax. Thank you, she whispered in the darkness, for not giving up on us. Thank you for finally listening, I responded. But we both knew this was just the beginning. The real challenges would come with daylight, when we'd have to maintain these new consequences against family pressure, tears, manipulations, and all the tactics 2 desperate teenagers could deploy. And deep in my mind, one question kept echoing. Would Fernanda really have the strength to maintain these boundaries when her children looked at her with those pleading eyes? Or would this new agreement crumble at the first real tear? Dawn would bring answers. But for now, in the dark silence of our bedroom, at least we had peace. Morning came too fast. I woke to the sound of Fernanda moving around the bedroom, already dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. Not her usual work clothes. I looked at the clock. 6:30 in the morning. Don't you have work today? I asked, sitting up. I called in, she answered, avoiding my gaze as she looked for her shoes. I need to deal with this situation with the kids. I got out of bed, blocking her path to the door. Fernanda, you can't run from this. I'm not running, she protested, but her eyes told a different story. I just need to see my children. Make sure they're okay. They're with their uncle, I said firmly. They're safe. What you need to do is hold the line we drew last night. If you go running to them now, you're teaching them that all they have to do is cry long enough and you'll cave. Every part of me wants to go to them, she admitted, finally meeting my eyes. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Julia's face, heard Felipe's voice. They're my babies, Lucas. I know, I said, softening my tone. But they're also almost adults. Felipe is 17. Julia is 15, old enough to understand that words have consequences. My head knows that, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. But my heart is screaming that I'm a terrible mother, abandoning my children to prove a point. You didn't abandon them, I corrected, sitting beside her. You're teaching them something their father's death and your permissiveness never taught them. That respect matters, that gratitude matters, that you can't treat people like servants and expect them to keep serving you. Fernanda nodded, but I could see the internal war raging inside her. Her phone, which she'd turned back on, started buzzing incessantly, message after message arriving in rapid succession. It's my mother, she said, her voice shaking. She says Julia called her at 5 in the morning crying hysterically. Says I'm cruel, that I'm putting a man above my own children. Says that I'm becoming like Eduardo was when he neglected us. Those last words hit like a physical blow. I saw Fernanda crumble, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks as she read more messages, not just from her mother but from her sister, an aunt, even a friend from work who'd apparently already heard a version of the story. Fernanda, I said, taking her face in. shaking her, my hands and forcing her to look at me. You're not Eduardo. Eduardo neglected you because he didn't want the responsibility of being a husband and father. You're trying to teach your children responsibility precisely because you're a good mother. There's a huge difference. Then why do I feel so horrible? She sobbed. Because doing the right thing doesn't always feel good, I answered. Especially when everyone around you is telling you you're wrong. Her phone started ringing. Marcelo calling. Fernanda looked at the screen with panic in her eyes. Answer it, I said. On speaker. With trembling hands, she accepted the call and turned on the speaker. Fernanda! Marcelo's voice sounded exasperated and angry. You need to come get these kids right now. I can't handle this anymore. Julia didn't sleep at all. She was crying all night. Felipe locked himself in the bathroom and won't come out. This is ridiculous. You're their uncle, Fernanda responded, her voice shaking but firm. This is what it means to be family. Dealing with difficult teenagers, sleepless nights, emotional crises. I'm their uncle, not their father, Marcelo corrected. And I have work. I have responsibilities. I can't be calling in sick because my teenage niece and nephew are having tantrums. So now you understand, Fernanda said. And I felt pride hearing the growing firmness in her voice. What Lucas and I have been managing for years. Except we also work. We also have responsibilities. And we never had the option of returning them when they got difficult. But this is different, Marcelo argued. They don't want to be here. They want to be in their home. Their home where Lucas lives, I interjected. Their home that I maintain financially. Their home where they don't respect any rules. Where they called me a Favelado outsider just yesterday. Ah, so this is about money, Marcelo said accusingly. I knew there was something behind all this. You got tired of paying and now you want to get rid of them. It's not about money, I responded, keeping my voice calm. It's about respect, something you apparently haven't taught them either, considering you tell them they don't have to obey me. There was a tense silence from Marcelo's end. I didn't say exactly that, he finally said. What did you say exactly? Fernanda pressed. Because Felipe mentioned you told them they didn't have to obey outsiders living in their house. Was he lying? Another silence, then a sigh. Look, maybe I said something like that, but I was upset. You got remarried so fast after Eduardo died, and Eduardo died 6 years ago, Fernanda interrupted, and I married Lucas 3 years later. That's hardly fast. The point is, Marcelo continued, clearly evading, I can't have the kids here indefinitely. My apartment is small. I have a girlfriend. We have plans. Then maybe it's time to reconsider your priorities, I said. Or maybe it's time to increase the financial support so Fernanda can afford a place where she doesn't have to depend on my house. The line went completely silent. I could imagine the shock on Marcelo's face. Increase the financial support? He finally said. I already send $300 a month from Eduardo's estate. That barely covers their school supplies, I replied. Fernanda, show him. Send him photos of the expense folder I prepared. Fernanda hesitated but then started taking photos of the folder pages and sending them to Marcelo via message. We heard the ping of messages arriving on his end. This can't be right, Marcelo muttered as he reviewed. 1,500 monthly average? That's just the average, I explained. Some months it's more, especially when there are school events, special activities, or when Julia needs new ballet equipment. I can't pay that, Marcelo said, his voice now less aggressive and more defensive. I barely make enough to keep my own apartment and have a girlfriend and go out on weekends and buy that new car last year. Fernanda finished with bitterness. I know, Marcelo. I've seen your social media. You have money for what you consider important. That's different. That's my personal life. Your nephew and niece are your personal life, Fernanda said, standing up from the bed with an energy I hadn't seen in her last night. They're your responsibility as part of Eduardo's family. Not just when it's convenient. Not just for the nice Instagram photos where you appear as the fun uncle. All the time. I'm not going to keep arguing about this, Marcelo said, his tone becoming hostile. Either you come get the kids in the next 2 hours, or I'm dropping them off with your mother and going to work. Drop them off with my mother, Fernanda responded, and I saw her hands stop shaking. And when my mother calls you to complain, you can explain why you can't take care of your own brother's children. I'm done being your backup. She hung up before Marcelo could respond. The phone immediately started ringing again, but Fernanda silenced it. I'm not going to the hospital, she said, looking at me with determination. I'm going to my mother's house. Are you sure? You're ready for that? I asked. No, she admitted, but I'm going to do it anyway. An hour later, we were in the car driving to her mother's house across the city. The morning traffic was heavy, giving us time to mentally prepare for what awaited us. My mother has always thought I'm too weak, Fernanda said suddenly, staring out the window. When I divorced Eduardo, she told me it was my fault for not trying hard enough in the marriage. When I started dating you, she said I was being selfish, bringing a stranger into my children's lives. No matter what I do, it's never enough for her. Why do you give her so much power over your decisions? I asked. Because she's my mother, Fernanda answered simply. And because when Eduardo left, she was the one who helped me. She gave me money when I had none. She took care of the kids when I had to work double shifts. She was my safety net. I feel like I owe her. You don't owe her your life, I interrupted, Helping your daughter in a crisis is what mothers do. It's not a loan that has to be repaid with blind obedience. We arrived at her mother's house, a 2-story building in a middle-class neighborhood. Marcelo's car was parked outside along with another I recognized as her sister Elena's car. She called reinforcements, I murmured. Fernanda took a deep breath. Let's go. We got out of the car and walked to the front door. Before we could ring the bell, the door opened. Fernanda's mother, Dona Rosa, a woman in her 60s with perfectly styled gray hair and an expression of disapproval, blocked our entrance. Fernanda, she said coldly, we need to talk. Alone. Whatever you have to say to me you can say in front of Lucas, Fernanda responded. He's my husband. Those are your children, Rosa replied, pointing inside the house where I could hear Julia's muffled crying. Your children who are devastated because you decided a man is more important than them. That man, I said, keeping my voice calm, has been financially supporting those children for years, while Eduardo's family barely contributes a fraction of their real expenses. Rosa looked at me with disdain. Money isn't everything. A mother's love. The love of a mother also includes teaching respect and consequences, Fernanda interrupted, surprising me with her firmness. Something you never taught me, Mom. That's why I ended up with someone like Eduardo who treated me like a servant. That's why I allowed my children to disrespect Lucas for so long, because I never learned that love doesn't mean allowing any behavior. Rosa's face went rigid. Don't you dare blame me for your decisions. I'm not blaming you, Fernanda said. I'm taking responsibility. For the first time in my life, I'm setting healthy boundaries, even if it hurts. From inside the house, I heard Felipe's voice. That's Mom. Mom? I saw Fernanda's face contract, every fiber of her being wanting to run to her son, but she stayed firm, her feet planted at the threshold. Can I see my children? She asked calmly. Rosa let us pass, though with evident disgust. In the living room, we found a carefully orchestrated scene. Julia on the couch, eyes swollen and red, being held by Elena. Felipe standing by the window, arms crossed in a martyr's pose. Marcelo sitting in an armchair looking uncomfortable and out of place. All eyes turned to us when we entered, and in that moment, I knew the real battle was about to begin. Mom! Julia sobbed, getting up from the couch and running toward Fernanda. But instead of throwing herself into her mother's arms as she clearly expected, Fernanda took a step back, maintaining physical distance between them. Sit down, Julia, Fernanda said in a voice I'd never heard from her before. Firm but not cruel. We all need to talk. Julia stopped short, confusion and pain crossing her face. Mom? Sit down, Fernanda repeated, pointing to the couch. Elena stood up abruptly. Fernanda, what's wrong with you? Your daughter is suffering and you. My daughter, Fernanda interrupted, is learning that words have consequences, something I should have taught her years ago. I stayed by the door, observing. Rosa had positioned herself strategically next to Julia, a protective hand on the girl's shoulder. Marcelo was looking at his phone, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Felipe maintained his victim pose by the window. I can't believe you're really doing this, Elena said, crossing her arms. These children are your priority, Fernanda, not him. She gestured dismissively toward me. Lucas is my husband, Fernanda responded, walking to the center of the room. And these children need to learn that respect isn't optional regardless of who the person is. We do respect him, Felipe lied from his position by the window. We just said we only obey our parents. That's not disrespect. You called him a favelado outsider, I said, pulling out my phone. Do you want me to play the recording again? Felipe blushed, looking away. Those were words said in anger. Rosa tried to defend. Teenagers say things they don't mean when they're upset. Maybe, I admitted. But when I said things like that as a teenager, I faced consequences. I lost privileges. I learned my words had weight. These kids have never faced real consequences because Fernanda always rescues them. Because I'm their mother, Fernanda said. And for a moment I thought she was about to give in. But she continued, and as their mother, it's my job to prepare them for the real world. And in the real world, if you tell someone who's paying your phone, your clothes, your classes, your food, that they're a favelado outsider with no right to set rules, that someone will stop paying. That's exactly what happened. So it's all about money, Elena spat. I knew there was something calculated about all this. No, I responded firmly. It's about respect. Money is simply the tangible manifestation of that respect. For years, I've paid for everything these kids need and want. And for years, I've received nothing but disdain and ingratitude in return. That's not true, Julia protested, tears rolling down her cheeks. We thanked you. Tell me when, I challenged. Tell me one single time in all these years you've thanked me for something I bought, paid for, or did for you. Julia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Her eyes moved to her grandmother, to her aunt, seeking help. Gratitude shouldn't be required in a family, Rosa intervened. It's your responsibility as the man of the house to provide. It's not my responsibility to provide for another man's children, I said, especially when that man is perfectly capable of doing it himself. It's my choice. A choice I made because I love Fernanda and wanted to be part of this family. But that choice comes with the expectation of being treated as part of the family, not as an ATM. Marcelo finally spoke. His voice tired. Look, we all agree the kids crossed a line. They said hurtful things, but it's been a night. They've learned their lesson. Can't we just go back to normal? What lesson did they learn exactly? Fernanda asked, turning to her children. Felipe? Julia, tell me. What did you learn from this? Felipe shrugged. That we shouldn't say things when we're angry? That's not enough, Fernanda said. That's just learning to hide your true feelings better. What else? Julia sobbed. That Lucas is sensitive and gets offended easily. I felt anger start to boil in my chest, but Fernanda got there first. No, she said, her voice sharp. Try again, Julia. And this time really think about what you did wrong. I don't know what you want me to say, Julia whined. I'm tired. I didn't sleep. I just want to go home. That's your home, I said, pointing toward the window, toward where my house was several kilometers away. The house I bought with my money before I met your mother. The house your mother and you moved into. The house I maintain financially while your uncle sends a fraction of what it really costs to raise you. But it's our home, Felipe insisted. We've lived there for years, and during those years, I asked, did you ever treat me like it was my home too? Did you ever ask my permission before inviting friends over? Did you ever follow rules I set? Did you ever consult me about anything important? Silence. Exactly, I continued, because in your minds I was just the guy who married your mom and happened to live in the same house. Not an authority figure, not a family member with a voice, just the man who pays the bills. That's not fair, Elena said. You chose to marry a woman with children. You knew what you were getting into. You're right, I admitted. I knew Fernanda had children. What I didn't know was that I'd be entering a dynamic where I'd be treated as a provider, but not as a person, where my feelings wouldn't matter, where any attempt to set boundaries would be undermined by Fernanda in private so the kids wouldn't feel bad. Fernanda winced but nodded. It's true. I did that. Every time Lucas said a rule that made them uncomfortable, I'd come afterwards and tell them not to worry, that I'd talk to him. I taught them not to respect him by not respecting him myself. Finally, Rosa said, some honesty. You chose to marry him, Elena said softly. You had no right to undermine him. I know, Fernanda said, looking at her children. And I'm sorry. Sorry to Lucas for allowing this for so long. And sorry to you too because I raised you to be disrespectful and entitled. You didn't raise us that way, Felipe protested. You're good to us. Being good to you meant never saying no, Fernanda responded. Never establishing consequences. Never teaching you that the world doesn't revolve around you. That was being permissive, not being a good mother. I don't understand, Julia said, genuine confusion on her face. We're not bad kids. You're not bad kids, I agreed, kneeling in front of her. But you're on a path to becoming bad adults if someone doesn't stop you now. I've seen where this path leads. Adults who think the world owes them everything, who never take responsibility for their actions, who blame everyone but themselves when things go wrong. I moved closer, looking into her eyes. I've watched you play volleyball. You're talented, hardworking, dedicated, but all that potential will be wasted if you don't learn that respect and gratitude are as important as talent. No college coach is going to want a player who doesn't respect authority. No employer is going to hire someone who thinks thanking people is optional. I turned to Felipe. And you're brilliant with computers. That science project you won first place for? You did that almost without help. But no tech company is going to want a programmer who can't work as part of a team. Who doesn't respect colleagues? Who thinks rules don't apply to him? I stood up, facing the whole room. This isn't revenge. It's not cruelty. It's the last chance to correct course before it's too late. The silence that followed was different from before, not tense or defiant, contemplative. Finally, Julia spoke, her voice small. How long do we have to stay with Grandma? Until you're ready to accept the new rules, Fernanda answered. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. It depends on you. And if we accept the rules but then change our minds? Felipe asked. Then you come back here, Fernanda said simply, and the cycle continues until you finally decide to grow up. Rosa approached Fernanda, her face a mixture of emotions. I never thought I'd see the day you'd become this hard. I'm not hard, Mom, Fernanda responded. I'm finally being the mother I should have been from the beginning. The mother who sets boundaries. The mother who says no. The mother who teaches consequences. The mother you never taught me to be. It was the final blow. Rosa stepped back as if she'd been slapped. Fernanda took my hand. We're leaving. The kids have our numbers if they need to talk. But we're not going to rescue them. Not this time. We walked to the door, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. Just as we were about to leave, I heard Julia's voice. Lucas. I'm sorry. Really sorry. I stopped. Turned around. The tears in her eyes this time seemed different, less manipulative, more genuine. I accept your apology, I said. Now prove it with actions. And we left. leaving the chaos behind. The next few days were the quietest our house had experienced in years. Fernanda and I moved through the empty rooms, adjusting to a routine that didn't include picking up backpacks from the floor or yelling reminders about undone homework. The silence was simultaneously liberating and disturbing. The first night, Fernanda cried on my shoulder for hours. The second night, she barely spoke. The third night, she finally started processing everything. "Do you think I did the right thing?" she asked as we ate. Dinner at a table set for just two. "I think you did what was necessary," I responded. Which is different from right or wrong. Sometimes parenting requires difficult decisions that feel bad, but are necessary. My phone vibrated. A message from Rosa. "Felipe didn't do his math homework and now he's failing. Says he can't concentrate here. You need to talk to him." I showed the message to Fernanda. She read it, sighed, and wrote a response. "Felipe is 17, old enough to manage his own homework. If he fails, those are the consequences of his decisions." "That's harsh," I commented. "Necessary," she corrected, using my own words. That same night we got another message, this time from Elena. "Julia left her volleyball uniform here. She has practice tomorrow. Can you bring her a clean one?" Fernanda wrote back, "There's a washing machine at my mother's house. Julia knows how to use it." On Friday morning, 4 days after the kids left, Marcelo called me directly. "We need to talk," he said without greeting. "In person. Just the two of us." We agreed to meet at a cafe near my work during lunch. When I arrived, Marcelo was already there with a half-finished coffee and an expression I'd never seen before. Humility. "Thanks for coming," he said when I sat down. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, getting straight to the point. "About my nephew and niece," he answered. "And about what a terrible example I've been as their uncle." I didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. "I've spent the last 4 days really thinking," he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "Since Fernanda and Eduardo divorced, I've been living like I'm single again, going out with friends, dating. I bought that new car, and every month when I send those $300, I felt like I was fulfilling my duty. $300 that barely covers their school books," I pointed out. "I know," he admitted. "I reviewed the whole folder you prepared, every receipt, every bill, and you're right. I've been living my best life while you paid for raising my brother's children. So what are you going to do about it?" I asked. "I'm going to increase the support," he said. "Not to the $1,500 Fernanda demanded, but to $1,000. It's the maximum I can do without having to move to a cheaper apartment." "Maybe you should move to a cheaper apartment," I said bluntly. "Your nephew and niece should be your priority, not your comfort." Marcelo tensed but nodded. "You're right. I'm going to think about it." "Is that all?" I asked. "Did you come all this way just to tell me you're going to pay more money?" "No," he said, finally looking me in the eyes. "I came to apologize for everything I said to Felipe and Julia about you, for undermining your authority, for making them see you as an intruder instead of someone who genuinely cares about them." This apology took me by surprise. "Why the change of heart?" "Because I spent 2 days with my nephew and niece in my small apartment," he said with a bitter laugh. 2 days of constant complaining, of sibling fights, of teenage drama, and I realized you've been dealing with this for years while I enjoyed my weekends as the fun uncle. He leaned forward. "The second night they were with me, Julia had a crisis because she didn't have her special conditioner. Not just any conditioner, that specific $30 one she apparently uses." She started crying, screaming that her hair would be ruined, and I had no idea what to do. I didn't even know she used special conditioner. "I do," I said. "I buy it every month. I also know Felipe prefers blue towels because he says white ones look dirty too fast. I know Julia needs to eat something with protein 30 minutes before volleyball practice or she gets cramps. I know Felipe studies better with instrumental music in the background." Marcelo stared at me. "You know my nephew and niece better than I do." "Because I live with them," I said. "Because I'm present in their daily lives, not just in the fun parts." "I know," he admitted. "And I poisoned them against you because I was afraid they'd see you as more important than me, that they'd see you as their real father and forget me. I never tried to replace Eduardo," I said. "I just wanted to be part of their lives, a support figure, someone they could trust, and I turned that into a competition that didn't exist." He sighed. "I'm an idiot." I didn't contradict him. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "you start being the uncle they need. Not the friend you want to be. You tell them it's okay to respect me. You tell them the rules in my house are fair. You tell them that when they come back, and eventually they will, they need to be different. And if they don't come back," he asked in a small voice, "then you adapt," I responded. "Because for the first time in 6 years, you're going to experience what it means to be responsible for teenagers full time." Marcelo nodded slowly. "Fernanda is lucky to have found you." "I'm lucky to have found her," I corrected. When she finally decided to be my partner instead of just the mother of her children who lived in my house, we said goodbye with an awkward but genuine handshake. As I walked back to my office, my phone vibrated. A message from Fernanda. "Julia just called, asked if she could come home this weekend. I told her only if she's ready to follow the rules. She said she'd think about it. What do you feel about it?" I wrote back. "Fear," she responded. "Hope." Both things. Me too, I wrote. That night Fernanda and I sat together on the couch, something we rarely did in recent years because there was always some teenage drama to handle. What if they come back and nothing changes? Fernanda asked, her head resting on my shoulder. Then we established the consequences, we said, I responded. No rescues, no immediate second chances, and what if they don't come back? She whispered. Then we learned to live with that decision, I said. And we know we did everything possible to teach them the lessons they needed to learn. On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after everything exploded, the doorbell rang. Fernanda and I looked at each other. She stood slowly and went to the door. There were Felipe and Julia with their bags, looking tired and smaller than I remembered. We want to talk, Felipe said. Fernanda didn't let them in immediately. About what? About the rules, Julia said, and about really apologizing. Fernanda stepped aside, letting them enter. They dragged their bags to the living room where I was waiting. We all sat down, the heavy silence between us. We go. First, Felipe said, taking a deep breath. Lucas, we owe you a real apology, not just because Mom forced us or because we want to come home. A real apology because we finally understand what we did wrong. We spent a week at Grandma's house, Julia continued, her eyes red but tearless, and we had to cook our own food, wash our own clothes, walk to school because Grandma couldn't drive us, and we realized how much you did that we never saw. Grandma made us a list, Felipe said, pulling out a folded paper from his pocket, of everything you spent on us each month. Not just the numbers we already saw, but the small things, like you buy the cereal I like even though you don't like it, like there are always clean towels in the bathroom because you wash them every few days, like we never run out of shampoo or toothpaste. And she made us do an exercise, Julia added. We had to write down every single thing you do for us in a normal day. It took us 3 pages just for one day. She showed me her notebook. Indeed, 3 pages filled with tight handwriting detailing everything from making breakfast to managing the internet they used for homework. We also talked to Uncle Marcelo, Felipe said. Really talked, not just his usual lecture. We asked him why he hated you so much, and he admitted he didn't hate you. He was jealous. Jealous that you were a better father to us than he ever was. He told us he owed you an apology, Julia continued, and that we did too. That he'd put bad ideas in our heads because it hurt him to see you there every day when he couldn't be. So we want to apologize, they said in unison. Really? Not for the specific words we said that day, but for years of disrespect, for treating you like you were invisible except when we needed something, for never thanking you, for never including you, for making you feel like an outsider in your own house. And we want you to know, Felipe added, that if you let us come back, we're going to be different. Not perfect, because we're teenagers and we'll probably mess up sometimes, but different. Better. We read the rules Mom sent us, Julia said. And we agree with all of them, even the one about gratitude, even though it seems forced at first. I leaned back on the couch, observing them. I could see sincerity in their eyes, but I also knew words were easy. Actions would be the real test. I appreciate your apologies, I said finally, and I believe they're sincere. But you need to understand something. This isn't just about apologizing and going back to how things were. The old way was broken. If you come back, you're coming back to something new. We understand, Felipe said. Do you really? I asked. Because coming back means when I set a rule, it gets followed without running to Mom to override it. It means your phones, your data, your activities, everything is a privilege that can be taken away. It means household chores without complaints. It means genuine gratitude. We understand, Julia repeated. And we want to try. Really? I looked at Fernanda. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Then welcome home, I said. But know this, the next time you cross the line, the consequences will be more severe. This was your warning. There won't be another. Julia stood and for the first time in years, hugged me. Thank you, Lucas, for not giving up on us. Felipe followed. A quick hug, but genuine. And thank you for taking care of Mom and us, even when we didn't deserve it. As they took their bags upstairs to their rooms, Fernanda curled up against me. Do you think it's going to work? She whispered. I don't know, I admitted, but at least now we have a real chance. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were actually a family. Imperfect. Still healing, but finally honest. 3 months passed. Our house had found a new rhythm. Not perfect, but real. Honest. Built on foundations of mutual respect instead of forced obligation or silent resentment. The first week after Felipe and Julia came back was like walking on eggshells. Everyone excessively polite, too careful. Julia said thank you after every meal with a formality that bordered on comic. Felipe asked permission for things that didn't even require permission. But gradually the rigidity softened. Gratitude began to sound more natural. Rules became routine instead of impositions. And most importantly, we started having real conversations. One Sunday afternoon, while I was grilling meat in the Abouzier backyard, Felipe came out and stood by the grill watching the coals. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Sure. Why didn't you give up on us? He asked. I mean, we were horrible to you for years. Most guys would have left mom or at least given an ultimatum much earlier. I turned the meat, considering my response, because I loved your mother and because you were part of her. I couldn't love her without at least trying to build something with you. But there came a point where you did give an ultimatum, he pointed out. Yes, I admitted, because I finally understood that allowing your disrespect wasn't helping anyone. It wasn't helping me, obviously, but it wasn't helping you either. I was setting you up to fail in real life. Felipe nodded slowly. Grandma made us talk to her neighbor, Mrs. Silva. She has a son who never learned limits or consequences. Now he's 32, lives in his mom's basement, and can't keep a job because he thinks all bosses are unfair to him. I didn't want that to be your future, I said. Or Julia's. Thanks, he said simply. Then, after a pause, can I learn to do that? The grilling? I'll teach you. And as I did, I realized this was the first time. In years, Felipe had asked me to teach him something, had voluntarily sought my company. With Julia, the turning point came 2 weeks later. She had an important volleyball tournament, and Fernanda had to work. I assumed she wouldn't want me there. I can take you, I offered when I heard her. Complaining on the phone with a friend, she went quiet when she hung up. Really? Sure. What time does it start? 9. But it's across the city and lasts all day. You don't have to. I want to go, I interrupted. If you want me there. I saw emotions cross her face. Surprise? Doubt. And finally, something that looked like hope. Yes, she said. I'd like that. That Saturday I spent 7 hours on uncomfortable bleachers watching Julia and her team play. I watched her serve, spike, celebrate points, and between games she came running to the stands. Did you see that kill? She asked, her eyes shining. Perfect form, I responded. The timing was impeccable. She didn't run off immediately like I expected. She stood there drinking water and then said, "Thanks for coming. It means a lot." Her team won the tournament, and when they gave her the medal, she searched for me in the crowd and waved. Something so simple, but it meant I mattered, that my presence was valued. That night at the celebration dinner, Julia posted a photo on social media, her with her medal and me beside her smiling. The caption said, "Champions with the best support. Thanks Lucas for always being there." Fernanda saw the post, and her eyes filled with tears. She'd never mentioned you on social media before. I know, I said, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. The real change in our family dynamic came when we faced our first real conflict under the new rules. Felipe failed a chemistry test because he'd been playing video games instead of studying. "I need you to help me convince the teacher to give me extra credit," he told Fernanda one afternoon. "Why did you fail?" Fernanda asked. "The test was unfair. Had questions from chapters we didn't even cover in class. Did you study?" I asked. Felipe shot me a defensive look that he quickly softened. "Not as much as I should have, but that doesn't mean the test was fair. The teacher sent an email 2 weeks ago," Fernanda said, showing her phone, "saying exactly which chapters would be on the test, including ones not covered in class. Did you read it?" Felipe's silence was his answer. "So you failed because you didn't prepare adequately," I said. "Not because the test was unfair. Everyone failed," Felipe argued. "Ask anyone. The teacher is known for impossible tests." "Did everyone fail?" Fernanda asked, opening the online grade portal. "Because I see here that 12 students got A's and 15 got B's. That's more than half the class that passed." Felipe's face reddened. "Well, yeah. But there are no buts," I said firmly. "You failed because you didn't study, and now you're trying to manipulate the situation to avoid consequences." "I'm not manipulating," he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you are," Fernanda said, "and the old me would have called the teacher, made a scene, gotten you extra credit you didn't earn. But that's not the agreement now. So what? You just let me fail?" Felipe asked incredulously. "No," I responded. "We let you face the natural consequences of your decisions. You're going to talk to your teacher yourself. You're going to ask him for extra work to recover points. And if he says no, you're going to accept it and make sure you study for the next test. That's not fair. That's real life," Fernanda said. "In the real world, when you don't meet your responsibilities, you can't call your mom to fix things." Felipe looked at both of us, clearly waiting for one of us to give in. When neither did, he let out a frustrated sigh. "Fine. I'll talk to the teacher, but if he says no, then you study harder. For the next one," I finished, "and you learn the lesson." Felipe stomped upstairs to his room. Fernanda looked at me with concern. "We did the right thing." "Yes," I said with certainty. "For the first time we did." The next day, Felipe talked to his teacher. The teacher offered extra work, a research project worth up to 10 points. Felipe did it, recovered half the lost points and passed the subject with a C. But more important than the grade was what he said when he got his report card. "I learned something," he admitted during dinner, "that if I want good results, I have to do the work. Nobody's going to do it for me." "Exactly," I said. "Welcome to adulthood." The following months brought more challenges. Julia wanted to go to a volleyball camp that cost $800. In the past, I would have paid automatically. This time, Fernanda and I told her we'd pay half if she saved the other half. "How am I supposed to save $400? She protested. "By getting a part-time job," I suggested. babysitting, walking dogs, whatever. Julia spent 2 weeks complaining, then surprisingly got a job babysitting a neighbor's child 3 afternoons a week. In 2 months, she'd saved her $400. I never thought I could do it, she admitted as she counted her money. I always thought getting money was impossible without help. Now you know it's not, Fernanda said. You're capable of much more than you believed. The most significant change came from an unexpected place. Marcelo, true to his word, had increased the support to $1,000 monthly. But more than that, he'd started having real conversations with his nephew and niece during visits. One afternoon he called me. I need your advice, he said. Something I never thought I'd hear. Felipe wants to go to a university with a good computer science program, but it's in another state. He asked if I could help with some expenses beyond regular support. And I'm asking you, what would it take? I'd have to make real sacrifices, like moving to that cheaper apartment you mentioned. How important is it to you to be part of your nephew's college life? I asked. Important enough to sacrifice your comfort? There was a long pause. Yes, he said finally. Yes, it is. Then you already know your answer. A month later, Marcelo moved to a smaller apartment. The money he saved on rent went into a savings account for Felipe's university. And when Felipe found out, for the first time in years, he hugged his uncle with tears in his eyes. Fernanda told me about it that night. Marcelo is changing, she said with amazement. Really changing. People can change when the consequences are clear enough, I responded. He saw what he was losing and decided it was worth changing for. Now, 3 months after that Tuesday that changed everything, I sit on the same couch where I told Marcelo to come get his kids. But this time the living room is filled with laughter. Felipe is trying to teach Fernanda how to play a new video game. Julia is showing me photos from her most recent tournament. Lucas, Julia says suddenly, next month is Father's Day at school. Do you want to come? My heart stops. What about your uncle? He's coming too, she says quickly. But the event is for all father figures. And you? You're my stepfather. That counts. I'd love to go, I say, feeling a lump in my throat. Felipe looks up from his game. I want you to come too. If you want? Of course I want to, I respond. Fernanda looks at me from across the room, her eyes shining with tears. She mouths silently, thank you. That night after, the kids go to sleep. Fernanda and I stay awake in bed talking in whispers. We almost ruined it, she says. If you hadn't made that decision that day, if you'd given up, I didn't give up, I interrupt. I set boundaries. There's a difference. A difference that saved our family, she says, curling up against me. And as I fall asleep, I think about that Tuesday not so long ago, about those words that changed everything. We only obey real family, not favelados. It turned out those words, so hurtful in the moment, were exactly the catalyst we needed. They were the bomb that destroyed a toxic dynamic and forced us to build something new, something better, something real. Was it easy? No. Was it painful? Absolutely. Was it worth it? Every difficult second, because now when Julia wins a match and searches for my face in the crowd, I know she sees me. When Felipe needs advice about programming and comes to my office, I know he trusts me. When Fernanda makes difficult parenting decisions, I know we're a team. And when the kids call me Lucas instead of Dad, it doesn't hurt anymore, because finally the title doesn't matter as much as the respect behind it. We're a family. Imperfect. A family that almost destroyed itself. A family that had to relearn how to function. But we're a real family, honest. Built on foundations that can finally support us all. And that, after everything, is more than any of us thought was possible just months ago. Have you ever felt your kindness was confused with weakness? Have you had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to Favela Streetlight Stories. Thank you for your support and for staying until the end.